What is naive realism, aka naive materialism? Naive materialism, also known as naive realism or direct realism, is a philosophy of mind that supposes that perception from the senses provides us with direct and accurate images of the world as it really is. Naive realism can be summed up in 5 core tenets. 1. There exists a world made of material objects. 2. Some statements about these objects can be known to be true through the senses. 3. These objects have an independent existence from our senses, meaning that they will exist as they are even when we're not there to perceive them. This is also known as perception independence. 4. These objects are able to retain properties of the types we perceive them as having, even when they are not being perceived. 5. By means of our senses, we perceive the world more or less as it is, meaning that our claims to have knowledge of it are justified. These may be tantalizing assumptions from the common sense view of reality, but when you think about it, what truly is common to our senses? Let's take a hypothetical, for instance. If a forager is out in the woods and trying to determine which mushrooms are edible for eating, how does he know which are poisonous and which he can safely carry home? If his village has foreknowledge of the woods and knows many of the indigenous plants there, odds are he has an idea of what to be on the lookout for. But is this really an endowment of the senses? How many people did not know this before the knowledge was passed to him? More importantly, where in his senses is the information to accurately safeguard him from picking up the wrong fungus? Can his senses solely determine the toxicity for him? It is often said that looks can be deceiving, but what is often omitted from this aphorism is that looks alone contain no kernel of information that is useful to us until we can analyze it and draw logical conclusions. We can collectively imagine that the state of modern science would be in very poor shape if geniuses were not allowed the breadth to posit those things that were not directly available to their senses through intuition, insight, and new ideas. The point I'm trying to get across here is rather simple. If the world that naive materialism supposes is all there is to the fabric of reality, then why must we go to such indirect lengths to draw conclusions from our senses? If our senses cannot fill in the blanks as we suppose they should, then maybe they're not depicting the true image of reality that we've assumed they are. Rather, what they offer instead is a very consistent series of projections that allow us to navigate the physical world. What we are able to learn from our senses, not just what we share in common with them, is the true difference that should be in observance. But to the question at hand, why do we call materialism naive? Because to assume that matter is the ultimate definition of what is real, and to stop our investigations of a natural world where our senses end, is too simple and too hasty a conclusion to draw. Reality is, after all, defined as the world or the state of things as they actually exist, as opposed to an idealistic or notional idea of them. What constitutes an idealistic idea is anyone's guess. Perhaps quantum mechanics is too idealistic. And yet the very foundations of quantum mechanics require us to abandon naive realism. We have to give up the idea of realism to a far greater extent than most physicists believe today. By realism, he means the idea that objects have specific features and properties, that a ball is red, that a book contains the works of Shakespeare, or that an electron has a particular spin. For objects governed by the laws of quantum mechanics, like photons and electrons, it may not make sense to think of them as having well-defined characteristics. Instead, what we see may depend on how we look. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or others, consider making a donation to my slush fund, I mean Patreon page.